All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Tim and Tim Show every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Glad to have you back again this week. Flying solo again. We've been really busy in the business and driving all over the state, and Tim Vest is on the road today and unable to join. We have to, as a partnership, we got to divide and conquer, and this is one of the things that we have to do. All right. I feel like this deal I haven't talked about in a while. A lot of you folks who have been following my story or been involved in my world for any length of time probably already know about this deal. But I wanted to bring it back up and kind of talk about how this deal really kind of changed everything for me. It enabled me to really kind of see the power of cash flow and seller financing, creative deal structuring, and things like that. This deal is a 24 unit deal that I had bought outside of Florence, South Carolina. I bought it for $910,000 and renovated it with about $150,000. So I was all in for about, with closing costs and stuff, it was like not too much over $1 million. And I sold it at the beginning of this year for $1,650,000. So net of closing costs and things like that, I got my original investment money back plus about $550,000 in equity, and it cash flowed over five, six, seven, $8,000 a month, depending on the month, for about 2.5 years. It was a great deal. Kind of missed that deal. I almost wish I didn't sell it, but some of the things that I've done with the money have enabled me to take care of my family and make sure that I had to. Hey, Dennis, how are you? Let me put comments up there. Morning, Dennis. So I sold this deal, and it was something that I did for my family, and kind of gave me some liquidity and enabled me to do some of the things for my family that I needed to do that had been put on hold for quite some time. Part of it was buying this house that we're living in now. All right. So how did I get there? Right. So you might be saying, Tim, like, yeah, sure, that's great. I'd love to make $550,000 in equity and $150,000 in cash flow. But at the end of the day, how did you get there? And it all started with a small investment in a condo outside of Charlotte. This condo I had bought for $76,000. I spent about $5,000 renovating it, and then in about 2 years later, I sold it for $151,000. So I turned a $19,000 investment into, I think I walked away with like 85 grand because I got, obviously I got my down payment. I had like debt of just over 50K, and net of closing costs and stuff, I walked away with like $85,000 or so. I took that $85,000 and I bought this $900,000 24 unit property. And the way that I was able to do that deal was, it came through a broker. The way I was able to do that deal was with creative seller financing. I went out, I bought the property with a construction loan. So they gave me 70% of the purchase price and 100% of my rehab costs. And then I had the seller hold back $250,000 at 3.5% interest for 5 years. So I paid that off early and obviously capitalized on the equity and just started moving the money, right? And this is what really kind of changed everything for me, was owning the deal by myself, like 100% by myself. There were no other investors in the deal. It really taught me the value of cash flow, because what was happening in the background was business was good, and we were doing a lot of transactional deals, making fees and stuff. So I had cash all the time. And then in the background, what was happening was money would just kept getting reinvested into this deal, right? We kept renovating the units, increasing the rents, taking care of deferred maintenance and capex ultimately, and making it a better place to live. But what was really nice, and I didn't fully appreciate it until later, and like later in my ownership, like about 12 months into owning it, it was just paying $5, $6, $7, $8,000 a month in cash flow, and it was just building up in this account. And this account was not in like my normal set of bank accounts. It was in a bank account specifically with the lender that gave me that loan because it was a requirement of the loan. But what was nice, it was like, every couple of months I'd look in there and there'd be like, I don't know, 15 to 20 grand. Right. And so what I started to do was I'd pluck, a little bit of cash out of that deal, in like $25,000 chunks. and I would put it into different LP investments in the syndication side of the business. So I was taking passive cash flow, reinvesting it into equity growth positions, and continuing to further compound and grow that money. I like to say that my entire real estate career started on this condo, because it truthfully it did. I was able to make, a $19,000 investment turned into 85,000. So it's like a 4x return on a $76,000 deal. Pretty astronomical. I will say I bought that in November 2019. So I bought it just before the COVID spike. I sold it in late 2021. So I had a little bit of luck on my side. I rode that wave up in Charlotte, and I sold it for a lot of money. I don't know if I could have sold it for anything more. I haven't, now that we're talking about it, I haven't gone back and looked at if there's any other sold comps in that neighborhood. But I'd be curious to know if anything else had sold, and if they sold for more. I mean, I would be shocked if in 2022 and 2023 nothing else sold and for higher than the price than what I sold for. Uh, so yeah, so how did I put myself in a position to do that? The condo I bought in November 2019, that was the deal that I kind of figured out that I didn't want to be in single family with. And that's when I cut the cord with the single family world and started to go all in on commercial real estate. It took me about 2 years from that point in order to it took me about 2 years from that point in order to go out and get into my first commercial real estate deal. But once I was into that first deal, I had the experience. I started to build the net worth. I started to build a lot of the different pieces of what I needed in order to do my own commercial real estate deal. And if it weren't for doing those other deals and taking the 2 years to learn how to do deals successfully, I don't know if I would have ever put myself in that position. And one of the things that you have to remember is that commercial real estate is a huge, huge mountain to climb in terms of education and networking and relationships and experience, to be able to successfully do it yourself. And I would be lying to you if I told you I didn't lose any money in the process. I mean, there are plenty of deals that we had gone after that did not work out, and we lost, sunk acquisition costs, right? So this year alone, I think Tim and I are out of pocket around $50,000 in deals that we had under contract that we did inspections for, that we had our team come in and they had to stay in hotels and do the inspections and pay for lunches and um, roof inspections, HVAC inspections, plumbing line scoping. I mean, all of that stuff costs money, and it can be a sunk cost if you don't close on the deal. So we've quote unquote lost money in real estate, but we've also made a whole lot more money in real estate than we've lost. It's not it's not linear, right? Let me tell you that again. The real estate world is not linear. Some deals are great and you hit a home run. Other deals you go backwards a little bit, but you'll learn something different. And the school of hard knocks, as they like to say, uh, experience, right? That's teaching you experience over time. And that 24 unit deal that I bought myself is what taught me a lot about analyzing the market. And the mistake that I had made that cost me a lot of money on that deal was I was over renovating for the area. I was spending about $8,500 a unit in renovations. We were doing new cabinets and countertops and flooring and paint and bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. And it got me to the market rate rents, but I didn't need to do that. It made me feel better. I'll be honest with you. It made me feel better, made me sleep better at night, knowing that the units that I had at my property were above market standard because people stayed longer and asking for rent increases was a little less difficult. But the new owner came in and did like a $3,500 renovation and got the same amount of rent. So it really taught me to kind of analyze and try different things before I went all in on one thing, right? Because at the time I was still much greener in the real estate world, and I said, well, I budgeted this much money per unit. I'm going to spend this much money per unit. Simply didn't have to. I mean, the market really didn't call for it. So the guy that bought the deal from me is doing very well, and that makes me happy, right? Because I don't want anybody to buy something and not do well. But I probably could have done a little bit better if I didn't over renovate the property that I had. So it's changed my mindset. It's given me some lessons to think about and actions to implement. And thankfully, it was only my money, right? There was nobody else's money in the deal, so anything that would go right or wrong was solely on my shoulders, and that's okay. So that is a deal that I'll hold near and dear to my heart for a long time because it taught me the power of reinvesting money, being creative, solving problems. Because when I first, so let me backtrack a little bit. A broker brought me this deal and I underwrote it, and the broker flat out told me this guy's asking too much money for this deal. And I was like, perfect, send it to me. We'll make a bunch of different offers and include some seller financing. I think my first original cash offer was like 600 grand. And then I had 100% seller financing, and then I also had a blend of seller carryback option. And he liked the seller carryback option, and that worked. So it helped me learn how to negotiate deals. It helped me learn how to structure deals and do it successfully. It helped me build a relationship with the broker because now that broker and I have a great relationship, and he sends me a lot of deals, which is great because he knows that will close on them. And just ultimately, I did what I said I was going to do. That goes a long way in the commercial real estate world. It really helped not only my confidence, but it helped my reputation in the space, and that's irreplaceable, right? The experience that I got from that deal alone is irreplaceable. Um, a lot of the success that I have today is built upon that deal, those two couple of deals. And what I'm interested in now is to see, okay, well, I sold the deal, I took some money of it, and we bought this house, and now what am I going to be able to do with the money? Because there's more money there that I can reinvest and put into a new deal and continue to grow it. And I think that it's a valuable lesson to learn that yes, luck was on my side a little bit, right? But the only reason it was on my side is because I was persistent and I got into an opportunity. You can never be lucky if you don't get into the game. Uh, I'd be lying to you if I told you. Well, I said this already, but if you expect to never lose money in real estate, then or any investment. Sorry, let's remove the real estate aspect. If you expect to never lose money in any investment you ever do, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? Uh, but a deal like this significantly changed my life and changed my family's life, and uh, that's one example of one deal. Like if you live a life of abundance, you believe and know, like I do, that there is a lot of opportunity out there. There's so much opportunity out there. I can't do it all. You can't do it all. Nobody can do it all, right? You can make a lot of money and change the legacy of your family and and your mindset overall by living an abundant lifestyle and learning that you are able and capable of buying a commercial real estate deal. And you might not have everything that you need today to do that, but if you don't quit over time, you will have it. And those are the types of things that you need to make sure that you're reiterating to yourself is it's hard right now, but I know at the end of the day, I will be able to be successful in this world if I choose to be. The only way that you're going to fail is if you quit, right? I know there's people watching the show right now. Dennis, Joe, you've done maybe a couple of deals at this point. I know it's been difficult. I mean, it's even difficult for me right now to be doing deals because the market's not doing that well. But just know that you being continually in the game, analyzing deals and making offers and talking to investors and brokers and lenders and insurance companies and all of the things that are taking up a lot of your time right now, but not producing any income, they will pay dividends later. And that's important to remember in the back of your head is that, I'd like to remind people it took me 3 years to get into my first commercial real estate deal. And I owned like a very small percentage of it. But what compounded from that point was the next deal with a little bit more, and the next deal with a little bit more, and the next deal with a little bit more. And every time you do another deal, you become more valuable because you have more experience, you have more net worth, you have more experience, you have more cash, you have more relationships. All of those things are necessary for you to be able to continue to grow the commercial real estate side of your world. I remember this deal. Yeah, Daniel, I know you remember it. I mean, we talked about it extensively. But this is the deal that changed everything for me, right? I mean, now whenever we look at deals, I always try to include some level of seller financing because I like to ideally I would make three offers. but more often than not, we make two offers. One offer would be the, hey, I'm just going to buy this, and we're going to syndicate it and raise money from people, and we have to meet a certain threshold for our investors and make sure that there's safety in the deal. This is what I can pay you. But if you're willing to be creative with me, and I know how much money that I have, if you're willing to do this for me, I can probably pay you a little bit more. It helps me out because I don't have to raise any money, and it helps you out because you get to sell it for a higher price. That's what we call a win-win scenario, right? And it depends on your posturing and depends on how you present the offer and the deal itself. But there are a lot of people out there that would be interested in seller financing. I know, I have a deal right now that we have up for, that we're kind of thinking about selling. We floated it to a couple different people off market, and I did the underwriting for them, and I presented it and said, hey, here's what you could buy it from if you want to, depending on your financial situation, you want to buy this and syndicate it, you're probably going to pay me this. If you want to buy this and I'm willing to hold back some seller financing, you could pay me this. And it's a win-win for both of us because you get to be able to buy the deal. The equity multiples are higher for you. I get to sell it for a higher price, and everybody wins in that scenario, right? And you have to make sure that over time you will get beaten down and beaten down and beaten down by rejection. But you have to stay consistent and continually try to do the hard things that maybe you don't want to do because you're not seeing success. But all you need, you're going to get 1,000 no's before you get one yes. And my one yes was that 24 unit deal that completely changed everything for me. And I'm not the only type of person, I'm not the only person that has a story like this. I don't want to say everyone, but I would say the vast majority of people that I know in my network of people, which is pretty large, have some type of story that they can relate to this level of creativity or this turning point in their investing career or their investing career or whatever business, right? Their business overall. There's always something that they can point to and say, man, if I didn't do this, where would I be? And more often than not, you can hear the stories of how they were rejected so many times. And it's hard. It can really drain you when you're working, maybe you got a full-time job, you're working 8 to 5 or 6 o'clock, and then you're burning the midnight oil underwriting deals or talking with investors and going to networking events and doing all of the things that you need to be doing. That can get exhausting. And I've been there. I know, and most of the people in my world have been there. It is something that you have to have grit to get through, but you only need one person to say yes, to give you an opportunity and say yes that can change everything for you. But you're never going to be able to get to that position or that point in your career if you give up and you quit. Hold on a second. I got a little bit of a cold. Yeah. So if you're feeling down right now and you're feeling like you've been working your ass off and you've been trying to do all these things and nothing's coming to fruition for you, and my favorite image of that is I'm sure you guys have seen it floating around online, but it's the guy that's like swinging a pickaxe and he's digging a tunnel, and if he had swung one more time, he would have come across all the treasure on the other side. And everyone that I know has had that point in their career where they just feel like giving up because it's too hard. And they ultimately decide not to give up. And that's when they find success. And I'm no different. I have the same exact success story. I wanted to quit. And 2 months later, I was into my first deal. And then 30 days after that, I quit my W-2 job and I was full-time real estate. If I had quit 90 days before that, I would have never put myself in a position to be having this conversation with you about how I made, 700 and almost $250,000 on this deal that I owned with no investment partners, right? There's a lot of opportunity out there, and you have to be creative, and you have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to talk with other people and figure out who can help me and how can I help other people to make it so that we both can achieve what we're trying to succeed, what we're trying to achieve. How do we both succeed in this world? And we both succeed by helping each other. right? It's not a zero sum game where I have to win all of it, right? It's not a zero sum game where you get nothing and I get everything. The most successful people that I know, think about the next person that's going to buy a deal off of them, because I'm not going to be able to sell a deal if you don't make any money off of it, right? And that's honestly, that's one of my favorite questions that I ask to brokers and different sellers and stuff. Where, say for example, the property is worth 2 million bucks when I'm done with it 5 years from now, and they want to sell it for $2 million today. I say, hey, you and I can both agree that this thing is worth $2 million 5 years from now. How do I make any money if I buy it from you for $2 million today? And the answer is, you don't, right? And therefore, that person is never going to sell that deal. There's a lot of psychological learning that you have to do, and experience alone is probably the best teacher. Having a network of people to rely on that you can ask questions to is obviously secondary to that. But the foundation of it all comes from your education, right? You have to learn how to speak, you have to learn how to analyze, you have to learn how to build relationships, you have to learn how to provide value to other people in order to achieve what you want to achieve. The whole precipice of everything that I've ever done is, how can I help you first? And that mindset has come back and paid me tenfold, or 100-fold at this point, because I really had nothing. I had no money, I had no real value to start with. And that's kind of the biggest limiting belief that most people have, is that I don't have any value. I don't provide any value. That's wrong. You do have value, but you need to do the inner work in here and figure out what that value is, because somebody out there needs what you have and what you bring to the table. You just haven't figured out what that is yet. It can be a very difficult question to answer on your own. But I have to say that the number one thing that got me to where I am today is figuring that out. Figuring out what I did to provide value to other people that needed the value that I brought. And I like to make the comparison of like a puzzle piece, right? Or a puzzle. You are a puzzle piece. You are very, very valuable. You're incredibly valuable, right? You are the only piece that fits in a specific picture to complete the picture. Your job is to figure out, what picture do you belong in? That's a very difficult journey to go through, and everyone's time results are going to be different on that, whether it takes you a month or 10 years. I don't know that, and only you can answer that. Obviously, the direct correlation to the amount of effort you put into it is going to be what you get out of it. So those that put in a lot of effort probably are going to figure that out faster than others, but at the same time, everyone is a puzzle piece at a certain everyone is a valuable puzzle piece. You just need to figure that out, right? Nobody else can figure that out for you. Nobody else can do the analysis for you. You have to figure that out by doing that soul searching, and by I honestly, I'm going to say it, you got to get rejected, right? You got to get rejected. You got to be put in your place. You have to know that it's the ego, right? You got to get your ego in line. And I think the best way to get your ego in line and to be a servant more than a ruler is to be rejected. Once you become a servant to others, well, that's when you start to really provide value, and people will value you. When you help somebody with no expectation of return, that's when somebody's going to feel like you have provided them so much value that they are required to do this for you. Like, they not doing this for you is not an answer. It's not even in their vocabulary, because this person has done so much for me, I owe it to them. And ultimately, it's not even that they owe it to you like an IOU, it's they want to, right? They see, man, this guy or girl has done so much for me and provided me so much value, and I see that they're struggling. I really want to help them out, because it would make me feel good to provide them value, because they've provided me so much value. Single-handedly, the hardest thing to do to get into your first real estate deal is to figure out who needs your value. Yeah, obviously you got to figure out your value first, and then figure out who needs it, right? And I'll give you some perspective on the other side of the table now. Is now that I've been doing this for going on about 5 years now, I don't really need a lot of things from a lot of people, right? We can sign our own debt. We have our own management company. We source our own deals. We raise most of our own capital. There's not a lot of value that somebody can bring to me at this point in time in terms of doing a deal. And I was in that exact same position. And I learned that I couldn't provide value to somebody else doing deals, but I could provide value somewhere else that they didn't even know they needed value in. And that's what got my foot in the door, right? Um, Once you're able to do that, then the world is your oyster, right? You can open up any door that you want by figuring out how to, analyze somebody and say, hey, this is what you're struggling with, and this is where my value is. Let me do this for you because I think you need it. Um, uh, that is the key to this success. And once you do that, you set yourself up for these doing a podcast like this, essentially, right? Like what deal changed your life? And you can trace it all back to the value that you provided to others. And the experience that you got by providing value and being a servant is what will make your mindset and your outlook on the industry and other people and how to solve other people's problems differently. That's how I got that deal. Was I figured out what this guy's problem was and I provided a solution to it. And the only reason that I had that mindset is because I was trying to be a servant, trying to figure out, hey, what your problem is, how can I help you solve your problem? Does it benefit me along the way? Absolutely did, right? But if you listen before you speak, if you listen to what they're telling you, they will tell you what they're looking for, right? Whether it's I need cash now, I got I have something else I want to buy, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. I don't want to say excuses, but the explanations of why somebody's going to sell something are exponential, right? They're infinite amount of reasons why somebody would want to sell something. And you can be the person that solves that problem for them. But you have to first get into the mindset of solving other people's problems by being a servant. So that's my story. That's how I got into this deal. That's why I love it, because it really taught me so much. To get to that point, to be able to put myself in that position, took an astronomical amount of work and learning and adapting and changing my mindset. And then once I learned those lessons that I had to learn, when the opportunity presented itself to me, I was able to solve the other person's problem almost inherently or naturally, if you would, because I had put myself in that position for so long. It was just my natural way of thinking. So once you figure out how to provide value to others, you're going to be able to solve other people's problems, and that's when opportunity is really going to open itself up to you. And when you have opportunity available to you, that's when you can capitalize on it. And it's not a greed thing, right? It's a value thing. And I want you to make sure you change your mindset towards that, right? Because it's not a greed thing. It's a value thing. I'm providing value by solving this person's problem. And once you can do that successfully, that's when you will be able to have the story about this deal changed my life and here's why. Because you got to go through the steps, you got to go through the process, and then once you do that, then you have basically the keys to the opportunity to solve other people's problems. So I hope yeah, thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. I know that you're working hard, man. Everyone sees it. So I know that you'll have one of these shows here shortly. Maybe not shortly, but who knows, right? Your, what's it? Mileage may vary is what people like to say or whatever, but, keep with it and stick to being persistent over a long period of time. And you too will be able to find the success that you seek. So, all right. Thanks. Peace.